Morning, folks. Put myself in a naughty step there. I was nearly late. Nice to see you all here today. Brian, Mr. E, Fiona, Stuart, John, Weebird, Donald, Margaret, Bob, Nigel. Hi, Nigel. How's Australia this morning or this evening for you? Hi, Geordie. BJ, I see you there, Lorna. I see Elizabeth's watching from Gran Canaria, or are you back home in Duisburg? Morning, Stephen, Donald. Numbers are climbing nicely, folks. Give you a wee bit more time to get on board. Now, sorry I haven't been around much the last wee bit, but as I explained to you a few weeks back, Sundays are a busy night for me these days, so Mondays is pretty much off the cards. But yesterday I had a funeral to attend. I forgot to give his prior notice to that. I apologise. Lasting a long line gone. As you can see, I've moved the naughty step to behind me, and my candle for democracy is still burning bright. Okie dokie. Right, that seems to be enough of you on board, so let's get this broadcast underway. Andy Truck Davey, with the truck and at home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it is overcast, dry at the moment, and 7 degrees. That's the weather forecast for Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. You want to know what the weather's like where you are? Look out your head, bloody windy. Alright, this is the news review from the colony of Scotland for the 10th of the 1st, 2023. Now, Tuesday started with two main themes in their eyes. First Minister's hospital warning and care home fears. Alright, the First Minister tells us that our hospitals are nearing capacity and only to go to A&E if it's an emergency, and to mask up if you're not feeling well. Now, on the care home fears, the Scottish Government are buying up spare capacity in the care home sector as interim care packages to free up capacity in hospitals as COVID, strep A and influenza are running savvy through the population. Okie dokie. Now, this winter Health Minister Humza Yousaf, yesterday Humza Yousaf to give a statement to Parliament on what they're going to do to alleviate pressures in the NHS. Okay. So that'll be later in the report. Okay, moving on. And Tuesday started in the propaganda machine, which is the BBC Radio Scotland, with a flagship debate show, Conservative K, called Conservative K. Anyway, the topic for discussion is private healthcare, because it's being floated. We got a wee bit more of that. We get Humza Yousaf's statement. Right. But the debate is very cleverly worded to try and hide what it is the sneaky buggers are doing. And that's to try to normalise the idea of private healthcare in our system. So the programme's called, Did You Feel Guilty Using Private Healthcare? And that's to get people to phone and say, no, I didn't feel guilty. It's normal. It's there. Too long waiting on the NHS. We even had a couple of their pet Brit Nats on telling us why they were using private healthcare. Even this one woman come on telling us, oh, people are dying in A&E. I can't go to A&E. I can't wait. I've got 2 children. You hear all the horror stories about the NHS. I can't use the NHS. Then they have on the head of the private healthcare sector in Scotland, an Irishman, funny enough, and he tells Kay that the Scottish Government should be buying up their spare capacity. But you and me know that that's outsourcing is what leads to the further privatisation of the NHS further down the line. But this guy tells us that NHS doctors are no depriving the NHS of their time by using their extra time in the private healthcare sector. What this guy tells Kay is the doctors are contracted to the NHS for X amount of hours, but can work up to X amount of hours, so they use the extra hours that they can work in the private healthcare sector. Kay, of course, doesn't bat the obvious question to him, because the answer is no, but she doesn't want the people to know what the answer to the obvious question is. The obvious question to put next was, well, if the private healthcare sector wasn't there, Surely these people would use their extra hours within the National Health Service. We wouldn't have a crisis in the National Health Service. That question wasn't asked. It was all about justifying NHS doctors using their extra capacity and the working time directive to earn extra money in the private sector. So, let's say Dr. Jim Colware, whatever you want to call them, Dr. Smith down the road there is contracted to the NHS for 37 hours, but he can work up to 60 hours a week. So, that's 33 hours he's selling his time into the private healthcare sector. The private healthcare sector isn't there. That would be 30 hours of potential overtime that he could put into the NHS. So, the Call K programme yesterday was all about justifying the use of the private healthcare sector and telling us that we already know that there's already a two-tier health sector in Scotland and in the rest of the UK. And there has been for a long time now. We can all think of private healthcare providers like Bupa and things like that. But we can also name companies that give private healthcare as a perk to the job. Sky, for example, a lot of the local authorities also do it, offer private healthcare insurance as a perk to the job. But the very existence of that private sector means that the doctors are splitting their time when the time could be spent in one healthcare sector or one healthcare organisation for the benefit of other people. Not just those who can afford it or those who get it as a perk to their jobs. So that's what the K programme was about. The propaganda machine started off yesterday trying to normalise the use of private healthcare and encourage the Scottish Government to do exactly that, buy up spare capacity in the private sector, which they hardly did. They know, the Scottish Government know the minute the private sector get a foothold in there, then the game's a bogey. As it will be in England very, very soon. Alright, so that was the propaganda machine. Moving on Tuesday, and primary school teachers are on strike. Education Minister Gillian Somerville tells the Pravda that there is still considerable gap in what the teachers want and what the Scottish Government can offer. Alright, now the Pravda, they're not having it. They get a couple of pet Britons on again to place the blame squarely at the door of the Scottish Parliament because education's devolved. And that is true. Education is devolved, but ultimately funding is not. And the Scottish Government is on a fixed budget. So if all those in the public sector here in Scotland want more money, they're going to have to wait until the Imperial Master down the roads decides whether we can have more money or no. So, yesterday, primary school teachers, and of course, we got a couple of Britons on to say, yep, we support the strikes, it's Holyrood's fault, and to a degree it is. But to a greater degree, it is all those who out there who voted no in 2014's fault. Because there's no magic Murray tree here in Scotland. None. Moving on Tuesday. And the weekly A&E waiting time figures are out. 2,500 people had to wait for up to 12 hours or more to be seen in A&E last week. Health Minister Humza Yousaf tells the Pravda he spends more time on the phone to healthcare unions than he did to his mammy. Alright. Asked what's driving the problems in our NHS, Humza tells the Pravda the COVID backlog, of course. Strep outbreak, the flu outbreak, inflation drawing money out of the healthcare sector because the higher costs are running hospitals and things like that, and a shortage of staff due to Brexit. That didn't go down well with the Pravda. We'll not speak about Brexit. Brexit doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, Tory Health spokesperson Sandy Gilhooly calls for Humza to resign. He's got a bloody cheek, as you know. What a bloody mess the NHS doing that roads in. And Dr. Sandy Skilhaney standing there in his work blues. He's a GP. All staged. Standing in a hospital in a set of blues. The guy's a GP in Mary Hill or something like that. Doesn't work in the bloody hospitals. Mental. Hey. Well, as I say, he's got a bloody cheek considered state healthcare down that road. We were on Tuesday and talked about our Imperial Masters down that road. Red Tory Shadow Health Minister, Wes Streeting, tells the Pravda that they would do what the Tories are doing, outsourcing the problem to the private sector. Treatment privatisation is going to speed up. Also, down that road yesterday, lying snake oil salesman Rishi Sunak tells the Commons that England's NHS is the best performing in the UK and that Scotland's is the worst performing in the UK. Now, as we all know, that's not true, folks. It's actually the other way round. And the worst performing NHS on this big rock is Wales. As far as I know, the worst performing NHS of all four constituent parts of the United Kingdom is Northern Ireland. But that's understandable because they haven't got a functioning government. And even if NHS England was faring any better, and it's no, it should be, because Westminster has access to the magic money tree. Right. We were on Tuesday, and Humza Yousaf gives a statement to the Parliament on the state of the Scottish NHS, and he says he's buying up 300 care home places for interim care to put people in until they can get care packages sorted out to get them home to free up space in the NHS, as I say. He also tells us that he's already made 600 emergency beds available, increasing the capacity of hospital estates. So that's 900 people we should be able to shove out of hospitals and free up 900 beds to be taken up by 900 new people, which will still get out of hospitals. Okay. Right. And he also tells us that they're going to recruit 200 new NHS 24 call centre people to make sure that people, when they're not feeling well, first call NHS 24 and get directed to the right facilities. It could well be that there are people showing up at A&E who could have been dealt with in a minor incident centre or at a GP's office or even at a pharmacy. So the idea is to beef up NHS 24 and get people to contact NHS 24 to be directed in the right direction, and that maybe give a wee bit more capacity in the accident emergencies rather than people just showing up at A&E. So that's the plan going forward. Nowhere in there did Humza even suggest using capacity in the private sector. And there's good reason for that. Because down that road, the Tories and the Red Tories are going to privatise NHS England. They're going to use this particular crisis to do it. That's why they created this particular crisis, and particularly, especially down that road. Whereas up here, we've been putting more and more and more of the Scottish budget into health. Down that road, they've been drawing money out of the health sector, running the NHS into the ground. Outsourcing the NHS's work to the private sector will take more money out of the NHS down that road, and you'll see the NHS down that road collapse. They're trying to engineer the same situation here in Scotland. When there's no funding going to healthcare in England, there's no bad consequences for Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, and we're all forced to go the same way, which is Sunak's plan. Talking about plans. The EU law reform bill is also going to get bounced through that parliament at a million rates and a million knots an hour, by the way, folks. The ERG and the disaster capitalists have only got a year and a half left maximum and power down that road to strip away all our employment rights and to deregulate the markets, which is the ultimate game, the ultimate end game for Brexit. To deregulate our labour markets, our consumer rights, all our rights. So watch for that one this year. Right, moving on to Tuesday, as I say, and the first real debate of 2023 gets underway at Holyrood. It is a debate on independence and holding an independence referendum. Now, as you can imagine, the cuckoos in the nest went after nuts. You can't have a referendum. There's a cost of living crisis. You can't have a referendum. There's a crisis in the NHS. You can't have a referendum. There's an energy price crisis. You can't have a referendum. There's a war in Ukraine. You can't make changes because our imperial masters down that road have turned the bloody place into a disaster zone. So there you go, folks. Crisis everywhere, but we can't have a democratic debate on changing how things are done so that we can get away from the crisis created by the cuckoos in the nest imperial master down that road, which is exactly what the Scottish Greens and the Scottish government tell them. We need independence because of the failures of your imperial masters. We have to put them right. We have to put the cost of living crisis right. We have to fix the NHS. We have to sort out the energy markets. We can't do any of that stuff while your imperial masters are in control. So there's a vote on the debate. Obviously, the Scottish Parliament votes in favour again of having a referendum. So now they're going to try and put pressure on Westminster again. And that'll be splattered all over the papers this morning, I suppose. But we'll get to that. So there you go. First real debate in the Scottish Parliament in 2023 is on an independence referendum. The cuckoos in the nest scream, you can't, because we're making an absolute mess of things, and we can't allow you to leave, because that would put us in even more trouble, because we're skint and stupid, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. Moving on, Tuesday, an NHS Scotland track and trace or test and protect service to be run down from 443 staff to 68 staff members. Health outbreak tracing was traditionally done in the health boards anyway. They have their own tracing units for outbreaks of various viruses. So it's to be downsized from 243 staff to 68 staff members. Martin Morrison of the COVID response team said, as we move through the stages of the pandemic, the portfolio of the team has changed. And as we come out of the pandemic, shocker, nobody tell me we're coming out yet. I'm sure the World Health Organization doesn't say anything to that effect. I believe the last thing I read to the World Health Organization a couple of days ago actually stated ongoing pandemic. Anyway, they say they're winding it down. So the staff who will be losing their jobs have to be offered other jobs within the NHS. And as we've just talked about NHS 24 being beefed up by 200 staff members, they've got 100 odd coming available on the market here and now. Right, moving on, Tuesday, the Scottish Government lay out its strategy for energy going forward towards net zero in 2045. And announces a presumption to wind down oil and gas production and to help existing fuels operate more greenly. It also wants to speed up the development of green energies like hydrogen, green hydrogen, wind, wave, and solar. And all very nice and all very fluffy. But it doesn't really matter what the Scottish Government's energy strategy is going forward to get us to net zero by 2045, because energy policy is reserved and Westminster's hell bent and betting the house on fossil fuels. And when they're finished betting the house on fossil fuels, if we are still in this bloody union, they intend to turn Scotland's renewable sector into a massive renewable sector generating £25 billion a year. For Westminster, we only, presumably, 8.3% of that money coming back to Scotland, because that's how it works with oil and gas. Westminster also wants to jump on Scotland's intention to turn that into a green hydrogen transport infrastructure and network, but they want to take the green hydrogen and sell it, as well as blue hydrogen, and sell it on the international markets. So when there's no more market for oil and gas, they're going to use oil and gas to create hydrogen and sell that in the international markets. So, are you yes yet? Or will you be choosing for our children to miss out in the second energy boom to come to Scotland? Will our children grow up in further poverty and deeper poverty than the ones did who missed out on the oil boom? By the way, that oil boom's still going on to the tune of about 43 billion quid a year into the UK exchequer. That's 1.8 billion quid more than they give the Scottish Government to run the whole of bloody Scotland. Yes, yeah. Or will future generations of children grow up in poverty as our imperial masters next door steal our resources and impoverish our children? Right. Now, also Thursday, Amazon to close its Europe distribution centre, of course, causing the loss of 300 jobs to the local community. Amazon are also closing a centre in the southeast of England, but say they are building 2 new mega depots in England, creating 2,100 jobs over the next few years. Now, Amazon said it will offer employees the chance to work at nearby centres, but there isn't any nearby centres if you live in Europe. Now, Amazon have a big operation in Scotland, but nothing quite near Europe. They've got the mega depot in Dunfermline, a development centre in Edinburgh, and smaller distribution depots in Baillieston and Glasgow, one in Motherwell, one in Bathgate, one in Dundee, and one in Portletton, as well as Amazon has a fresh food delivery company in Glasgow called Amazon Fresh. All right, but there is nothing near Europe. So the loss of 300 jobs in Europe is going to be a sore one for Inverclyde. It's going to be a right smack to the economy. Also Tuesday, in another attempt to kill us all, our imperial masters in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers declare it's giving Challenger 2 tanks to the Ukrainians to aid in the war effort against Russia. And defending itself from Russia, should be correct. But let's hope Moscow doesn't see it as a direct intervention, folks. We've spoke about this before. There are things that we call defensive weapons and things that we call offensive weapons. Tanks are no defensive per se. They are actually an offensive weapon. And that could be seen as a direct intervention. So, glad. Could be going to bloody well nuke us all. Just to add to the fun. Anyway. Think about modern tanks. The thing about tanks is Challenger 2, by the way, is the old tank. The new one they're producing, I think it's called the Ajax. Doesn't fucking work. It's been 12 billion quid doing the tubes for the new Ajax tank, and it doesn't work. They haven't delivered any in the last 5 years. Mental. The ones that have been put out there for testing, the drivers have went deaf with Kilmahill because fumes getting into the. It's just a bone-shaking bag of crap. Right. Anyway, so there you go. In another attempt to get us all blown off the face of the earth. Our imperial masters are giving offensive weapons now to Ukrainians as opposed to defensive weapons. Okay. Also Tuesday, it's reported that the bill to limit strike actions in the public sector to go before the Commons. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says she'll oppose the bill every step of the way. So I can see Westminster taking one in a bloody nose here. Because this one's going to end up in the Supreme Court. If the Scottish Government's going to do anything about it, I suggest to take it to the Court of Sessions first to deem it illegal here in Scotland, and then take it to the Supreme Court. Okie dokie. And also Tuesday, finally for Tuesday, the final item, parents angry, we are told by the Pravda. as a preliminary examination diet in Scotland to be rescheduled because of the teacher strike. So those that are doing their prelims this year, some of their exams will have to be rescheduled because of the teacher strike. And Davy could hear a sigh of relief from tens of thousands of children right across Scotland who could do an extra couple of days to study before their prelims. Aye, yeah, I could just hear it after the announcement. Ah, 2 more days to squat before I have to sit my exam. So all the kids out there who haven't been up to speed, they've got a couple more days to get up to speed. Can't argue with that. Right, that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found it informative. Right, so that's basically a rundown of what was in the Pravda yesterday. Mainly what was in the Pravda yesterday was NHS shite. And I've already explained to you why. And the BBC here in Scotland are trying to sell the idea of allowing the private sector and to use private sector capacity. These are never short-term fixes. Once the private sector gets its foot in the door, it's in direct competition with the NHS. It will draw funds from the NHS. The NHS will collapse, leaving only the enriched private sector to services. That's how this works. Just so you know. That's what's going on, and that's why the Pravda is going full pelt to tell us our NHS is shiting on the verge of collapse. Simple as that. And they've engineered the circumstances to make that happen. But thankfully, the First Minister and whom's up are not biting. They're not allowing the private sector to get a foothold in our NHS and to go into competition with our NHS. That could well lead to Westminster taking it half as a devolved power. And that's what Sunak was up to in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers when he was trying to say the NHS England's the best one in the UK and the NHS Scotland's the worst. Because the US want access to the whole of the UK's healthcare sector as part of a deal to get a trade deal. They also want to take control of some of the banking sector, and they want the NI protocols implemented the way they were agreed with Bojo in 2019. So it's not going anywhere, but the privatisation of the NHS is still going to happen, right? And that's why we're getting all this. Sounds bad again, Ruth. Sorry about that. I'll have a wee look in here. See what the mic's set up. That seems to be fine. I don't know what it is. Maybe the bandwidth route. Anyway, let's look at this morning and see what the papers are going to say. You can bet your boots that NHS bad will be in there somewhere. Oh, by the way, the other story here, big story yesterday, which I wasn't touching with a barge is the ongoing barney between the two princes doing that, or the Ponces, or whatever you want to call them. Two of the idiots with the gilded cage, anyway. Right, what we got in the papers today? Let's have a look. Scotland's papers ditching North Sea drilling and Amazon job blow. SNP plan to speed up decline of oil and gas. Doesn't matter what the SNP plan, as long as we're still in this bloody union. Then it's a reserve matter. The Times has Sturgeon ditching oil will create jobs boom. It might not. But it's all pie in the sky as long as we're still part of this union. The Herald has ministers consider speeding end to reliance on oil and gas. We've got more balance there. Collision course with UK as study finds North Sea stocks run out in 20 years. We've heard this bollocks before. But at least the Scottish Government are actually preparing for this sort of bullshit this time. They're saying we're going to build our economy around oil and gas. We're going to build it around our vast renewable sector, our food and drink sector, our manufacturing sector. We're going to rejoin the EU and get us into that big market where we're going to sell our renewables, our great foods, and our great services. The Daily Record has online shopping giants accused Amazon crime. US retail website slammed for shock plan to axe hundreds of staff in Scotland. That's the Guru site. The National has man in court accused of threatening to assassinate First Minister in Facebook post, and indirect to Israel right. I was reading that one, I did the debate on it yesterday. A message sent to Westminster's Holyrood backs referendum motion. Denying democracy a dangerous thing, Robertson warns Tories, and Graham, if the result of that ballot box don't count, what does? What does? The people just tell them to fuck off en masse. The Scottish Daily Mail, what planet are they on? Nicola Sturgeon and her government were accused of choosing independence over people dying yesterday by forcing MSPs to debate separation. See, this sort of pish. We're supposed to live in a democracy. This loony rag should be dragged into court for crap like that, the Mail. People should get what they vote for. Robertson's right. If you want to Graham's right at all. If votes in the ballot box don't count, then what bloody well does? And the SNP and the Greens said independence in their manifesto. If that's what they want to debate in the Parliament, they are the government. And other loony rag, the Express, has terrifying reality of A&E waits in Scotland. A lot of bollocks. And folks, I'm going to do a wee tour of the A&Es in this area in the next couple of days. Public building. I've got a mask. They probably won't like me recording. I'm going to walk into A&Es in North Lancashire and have a look for myself. Because that's what decent reporters do. The Eye has. Millions of workers face a new strike ban as NHS crisis gets worse. And this is a Grant Sharp introducing the bill to limit how many public sector employees can go on strike at any one time. Basically, rendering strike as a tool in industrial action, absolutely pointless. The Metro has strike right fight. Sturgeon vows to oppose Sharp's anti-union laws. So I guess we're off the court with this one. The Telegraph has saving the planet is not our job, says Fed chief. In other words, the head of the Federal Reserve says feck global warming. Right, where's the Star? What's the Daily Star of Scotland got for us today? Ticket inspectors quit and spend 10k redundance on ticket inspector quits and spend 10k redundance on becoming the king. There's a great guy who works down the bus depot, swears he's Elvis. The Star. You've got to love the Star. Everything's going to pot run about us, but the Star always has a funny story. Always. And there's a picture of Blake if you're on the bus, he's saying, I hate you, Elvis. Mental. Right, that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you found it informative. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. That should put us back on track. I don't know about the two Davies yet. David's still recovering, so the two Davies will get up and running as soon as David's up, feels up for it. But I'll be back tomorrow to go through it all again, all the crap that's in the news today. And I can imagine right now everybody's ears is drumming with the NHS bashing that's going on right across these islands as they prepare to privatise health. That's the name of the game here. Anyway, support the independent broadcasters like myself, although I don't want any of your money, as you know. But support independent broadcasters, support Broadcasting Scotland, Independence Live, Indie Live Radio, Caledon Media, Trues Radio, the iScot magazine, and the national newspaper. Support independent bloggers and bloggers. And if you've got a crowdfunder on the go, and that's what they do for a living, then if you can throw a couple of shekels in the pot, as you know, I'm not interested in your money. If you like what it is a day, then you have the option of sharing it across your social media platforms. Simple as that. If you are going to share this on Facebook, give me a couple of minutes after the end of the broadcast to set the video to public. As you know, Meta have been limiting me. Alright, so that's what I've got for you today, folks. hope you enjoyed it. Now remember, follow the last couple of bits of guidance. In fact, take the First Minister's advice right now. 1 in 25 people in Scotland have caught COVID at this point in time. If the flu's running a savvy out there, strep A's out there, mask up. If you're in a large enclosed public area, mask up. I'm putting mine back on. Going to a funeral yesterday reminded me of where you could bloody well end up. That's no funny. So that's it for the day, folks. Look after yourselves. I'll be back more today. Have a nice day.